Yeah. So this is officially the first Powerbar Instagram live stream.
Yes.
I
True.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, why don't we kick things off? We've got a great group here. So hi everyone. Thank you all for joining us. As I said, we're going to break your week in half. So we're right in the middle. So if you haven't had a chance, so my name is Matt Schuster. So I'm the founder of AgeGrouper. And if you're not familiar, we're an endurance sports platform really focused on the age group athlete. Our goal is to help those that are aspiring and looking to improve in the sport through the guidance and stories of others that have been there before. So that actually, which is what brings us here today. So as many of you might think, fueling is a crucial part of all endurance sport, really all sports in general. But we actually have, and both Eric and Alex will attest to when we get into the conversation, learned that there is a bit of a chronic problem of either under fueling or those not even knowing they're supposed to be fueling, both in their training and more importantly on race day. So to help shed some light, we're graced to be able to have Eric Zaltas, who's the CEO, Chief Energy Officer over at Powerbar Sport, and then Alex Larson, who runs Alex Larson Nutrition, registered dietitian, and really focus on the endurance sports athlete. So the conversation today, we're going to really dig into some of the basics, the core components and core elements of what goes into proper fueling. And then we'll also leave some time at the end to answer any questions that you guys have while we have, these two incredible people here. So, but why don't we start off, Alex, why don't you go first? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your company and your experience within endurance sports.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Alex. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that my face is all over there with the Instagram Reels. So I'm a registered dietitian. I've been one for 12 years now, and I'm a age group runner. I am by far not a superior athlete in any means. I'm very much an amateur, always looking to improve, and I fell in love with triathlon. 2009 was when I did my first race, just a local sprint. And then 5 years later, I found myself in Ironman, Wisconsin. And when I crossed the finish line of that race, I truly felt my calling, that I felt like I needed to help other endurance athletes cross the finish line and feeling really good, because I witnessed firsthand the importance of how crucial nutrition can be in those big events, and even a 70.3 or even the shorter distance races, in making sure that you fuel well during the race and around your workouts, but also you're allowing your body to recover well. So that is why I started my business, and working with endurance athletes, helping them feel their best, be their healthiest versions of themselves, and being able to accomplish all their goals as an athlete. And I live in Minnesota too, so I didn't say that, and I have 2 little kids. So I know what it's like to be a busy mom that has a career and trying to be an athlete at the same time. So I know that all of that can feel really overwhelming and trying to fit everything in, but I think doing it in a way that works for you is always best.
And you also know what it's like to be locked in on a bike trainer 4 or 5 months of the year because everything's frozen outside.
I hate my least favorite part of triathlon, but it is nice once spring comes. There's nothing better than that first ride out on your bike.
Oh, absolutely. And then Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about your storied past, because you have quite the tale.
Yeah, we'll go quick. Matt, thanks for the opportunity. So way back when bike wheels were made out of stone, I was a road bike racer, and had a stint on the national team. Got a national championship in an event called Team Time Trial. Represented the U.S. in the Stars and Stripes in a bunch of races around the world. And then, I had a scientific background, went to the Bronx High School of Science, studied scientific topics in college, and got interested in the connection between nutrition and health, and nutrition and performance while I was bike racing, and picked that up as a career got a couple of graduate degrees in nutrition and sports nutrition, and basically ended up in industry. And after a few years, ended up in Powerbar in Berkeley, California, where I was living at the time. And, 20 years later, I live and breathe the brand. And I'm currently an AgeGrouper triathlete. I'm not going to tell you what age group I'm trying to compete in, but it's up there. And I did 1,500 yards about an hour ago. My hair's still wet. And so it's really, I both understand the science, I apply it to myself, and maybe I can apply it to myself as an aging grouper. So maybe that's the perspective I bring that's different.
Yeah, and your experience with Powerbar as well, carries through quite its storied past as it goes, in terms of going through from a small brand to a large brand, and now back to a more focused endurance sports brand as well with Pivot Nutrition. So
yeah, Powerbar is going right back to the roots, where it started with athletes, sponsoring events, sponsoring athletes. And we've got the products that help athletes perform better. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, great. So why don't we jump into it? So the first area I'm really excited to cover is there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the thoughts around fueling. So Alex, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about, from the athletes that you're working with, what are some of those misconceptions that you have to help course correct on?
Yeah, there's quite a few, but I would say some of the most ones is making sure that your everyday nutrition has a really nice self into it, because a lot of athletes will think like, oh, I'm just going to, around my workouts and focus on fueling there, but then their everyday nutrition is kind of more lax. And I think that's really important to think of, not just fueling around your training, but also thinking of the recovery process. Especially if you're in a really heavy training load, you need to supply your body with that nourishment after your workout so that you recover really efficiently and effectively, so you're ready to go the next day. So that's really important, is just making sure that not just focusing on the training, but also the recovery as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we're going to dig into the recovery best practices in a bit. But when you're talking about kind of that daily nutrition, are there any basic guidelines that you instruct or you guide your athletes to follow?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I see a lot of underfueling with quite a few of my athletes. Every once in a while, I'll get one that maybe is overfueling, but that's pretty rare. But with underfueling, I think it's important for people to remember they have to eat consistently throughout the day. It's not just about eating post-workout and then just forgetting about things. You have to be on top of it and continuously supply nourishment throughout the rest of the day. And putting together balanced meals. A formula for me, a basic balanced meal, is lean protein, complex carbs, a fruit, and a vegetable. If you can get that accomplished, and then just adjust your portion sizes accordingly, depending on how active you were that day, you can put together some pretty balanced meals and provide yourself with the nutrition that you need.
I absolutely. And you actually triggered a point when you were talking about the mix of the macros. And one of the things that there's, we've seen it quite a bit with the athletes that we talk to, is many people that have joined into endurance sport are doing so to get healthy, but also others are doing it to potentially lose a couple pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this growing thought of, if I have to have my calorie deficit, if I fuel pre, during, or post, that's throwing things off. Mm-hmm. Alex, I'm curious to get your thoughts, but Eric, I'm also curious, as you think about, you're putting together the products over at Powerbar, is that something that comes up, and is that something that is part of the conversation?
Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, well, I would just say that I hear from athletes almost weekly of that fear of weight gain if they're going to fuel more. And I think that's part of the whole diet culture mentality of calories in, calories out with weight loss. And it's when you're an endurance athlete and you're training for big events 70.3, I mean, any race, when you're doing more activity, you have to think of yourself as an athlete and feel most, and your body will adapt through that. But if you're under fueling too much, I mean, you're going to tank your metabolism. You're not going to be able to lose weight in the right way. When athletes come to me and they say, I want to lose weight, I know what their meaning is. They want to keep the lean muscle. They want to lose the excess body fat. And it's a complicated process with an athlete. So you have to let go of that fear of weight gain, and you have to make sure foremost that you're well fueled so that you can continue to train and feel really great. Because if you have terrible workouts back to back to back, you're not going to want to continue to train, and that's not fun.
So if I could build on that, in order to have a good workout, you need to be fueled. And the longer the workout is, the more fuel you need. And if you're not fueling the workout, you're not going to have as good a workout. However, if you're not working out as much, you need less fuel. So instead of thinking about it in terms of I'm trying to take in less calories than I'm burning, think of it as fueling the workout. And if you have a workout if you have a rest day, it's okay to cut back a little bit on carbs. Keep the protein up. And that is a way that you can make sure that you're fueling the important workouts, but you're not taking an extra on days that you're doing less. That's a way to and this is what a whole range of athletes are doing, and it's okay to take that into account. So you don't need to be carbo loading every day, and you just kind of gauge the carb intake level to the kind of workouts that you're doing. So if you've got 2, 3, 4 hours, if you don't carb up, you're going to have less of a workout, and you're going to hurt your ultimate performance goals.
Yeah, and you usually end up paying for it later if you underfuel around your workouts too. Like you end up with cravings, you're hungry in the evening, and in the evenings you're usually tired, so you don't tend to make the best food choices then. You tend to just grab whatever's randomly in your kitchen, and you tend to overeat. And so there are things too. It's like I'd rather load their nutrition earlier in the day so that when they're tired in the evening, they can just have a light snack and then go to bed and rest really well. And I just had a conversation with one of my clients this morning who had a week-long training, a triathlon training, where he was doing 2-3 days, for an entire week. And I said, when you're not training and sleeping, you're going to be eating. And he's like, really? I go, yeah, I want you eating like at least 3,000 calories a day. And so that's what he did. And he's like, I had great workouts all up until the end. He goes, we really had a very brutal bike ride. He goes, and I had no issues with it. And I actually came out of it, having pound, and that never really happens. Usually I'm up in weight by the end of the week because his body's so stressed, all of that activity. So you have to think of yourself as an athlete and nourishing your body so that you can recover really quickly and your body is okay with dropping some excess body fat.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the concepts of if you finish your workout, you finish your ride, or you finish your training session, and you come off that bike and the first instinct is, I need to eat right now. Usually that means that you were probably a little bit light, either leading into or during.
Yeah.
Now, Eric, you mentioned, we've all heard the term carbs are king. We all talk about getting in as much carbs, but carb is a very general term. When you look at all the products that are available, including Powerbar, there's different components that comprise what those carbs are. Tell us a little bit about what are the components that go into it, and what is actually the optimal mix that we should be thinking about when we're making our decisions.
Sure. So let me just back up, and I'll lay out the rationale.
Can you hear him?
I think, yeah. Okay.
If you are, am I cutting out?
You did there for a second.
Can you hear me?
Go back.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So the background is that your carbohydrate stores are limited when you're going at race pace. And what we're doing here is, we're thinking about ultimately you're going to be doing a race and you're trying to set up your best performance at the race. So you at race pace, your carbohydrate stores are going to be fueling you primarily. And when they run out, when you're getting toward the end of that race, you're going to be forced to slow down. However, you can take carbohydrates on board while you're exercising, and that has been shown repeatedly to improve performance. Then on top of that is, what is the best way to fuel in order to improve your performance the best it can be? So you do all this training, you're set up for race day. If you do no carbs, your performance is going to suffer. If you do some carbs, you'll do better. But there is an ideal way to fuel during exercise, during a race, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. So if you think about getting a carbohydrate from your mouth to your working muscles, the rate limiting step is absorption. So that is, you're right, your carbohydrate, whatever form it is, goes into your mouth, into your stomach, gets passed from the stomach to the small intestine, and that's the spot of absorption. There is a very specific limit to how much carbohydrate can be absorbed at that point in digestion and absorption. And that is where the specific mixture of carbohydrates come in. And this is, I was involved in this research. We sponsored a PhD and did work in a great lab in Europe and showed that actually a combination of glucose and fructose at a ratio of 2 to 1 is the best way to fuel and to get the maximum amount of carbs absorbed in the small intestine per unit time per hour. So all of the Powerbar products are designed to have that exact mixture. And again, the idea is this: you start with this limited carb fuel tank. It's going to deplete like a gas tank. And if you can add fuel along the way, it's going to help improve your performance. And really, you want to kind of bump up that carb intake as much as you can. And then, of course, you want to practice that in training. And I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more and how to prepare for race day in training. But ultimately, on race day, you want to be practiced and know how much carbohydrate you can take in. And like I was saying, there is an optimal fuel mixture that is science knows to take on board to improve your performance.
And then is there, I know that you've done quite a bit when you look at some of the literature that Powerbar's put out there and even stuff that's right on their packaging. Is there a guideline in terms of how much that athletes should be thinking about taking in, whether it's how much in calories, how much in carbohydrates?
Yeah.
And what is the guidance that you guys prescribe?
Yeah, this is a concept that, if the folks who are watching today take something away, this is really important. And it's not just Powerbar guidelines, but this is the general guidelines. If you read the consensus statements from, authorities, sports and exercise authorities, as you get up to 70.3 and Ironman distance, you really want to be pushing carbs up 60 to even 90 grams per hour. Now, I like to work in grams of carbs per hour because some products you take might have other things that contribute to calories. It's the carbohydrates that are limiting. So really that's the one to focus on. So again, 60 to 90. And really you can't do the 90 grams per hour unless you're taking in a mixture of glucose and fructose like I talked about. As you come down in distance, so let's say you're going at 70.3, you're at the level of doing that 60 to 90. When you start coming down to like Olympic distance, then you're in 30 to 60. Okay, and then as you come down below that, you're probably in 30, and sometimes you can, if it's short enough, it's not even critical. So it's kind of the 30, 60, 90 thing, 30, about 30 for sprint distance, 60, 30 to 60 Olympic, and then from 70.3 up to Ironman, you're 60 to 90. The really important thing is you need to practice these numbers. You need to learn what number is comfortable for you, because you can't just show up on race day and say, oh, I'm supposed to do 90. Let me look at all the products I have and add up. You've got to practice it. And you might find that 90, you can't do 90, you can't tolerate it. So, that is the purpose of taking these products with you when you're training. So you can practice that for race day. Once you've got that dialed in, then you can start, you don't have to hit that maximum level in training every time you go out. You're really trying to get ready for race day and practice those numbers. So, for me, I actually can do 90 grams an hour. I've done two sub 3-hour marathons. I did 90 grams running. Running is the hardest time to get in the high level of carbs. Cycling is much easier. Swimming is obviously impossible, just about. So those are the guidelines.
Yeah. So actually, on that point, you bring up another area that is worth talking about. And Alex, I know that you and I had conversations about this, which is, taking on fuel on the bike, pre-race, on the run, formats, flavors, these are all things that come into play. So, Alex, I'm curious if there's any sort of best practices that you've provided, or even guidelines that you've shared with the athletes you're talking to.
Yeah, it's not just, there's so many different aspects to like preparing for a race nutritionally. So finding your threshold of how many grams of carbs you can absorb in an hour, like comfortably, and then how are you going to carry all of that, and what sources are they going to? So a lot of times with Ironmans, it's like, can we put an hydration mix in your water bottle so that you're getting supplied some calories, and electrolytes and hydration all in one option, and then supplementing with some energy chews or a gel, or whatever other options it is you like, and then also trialing a lot of different options to find out what textures and flavors you like best. Because as you get into the later hours of those races, flavor fatigue can fit in, and something that you normally really love, all of a sudden, gag, just trying to like get it down. So I always say, like, just pack like an extra little something with you, just in case like you have a little flavor fatigue, you can try different. Or with aid stations, research what is going to be there, trial that, so that just in case you grab something, if maybe you drop something on the bike and you need to swing the aid station and replenish. That way you've trialed it and you know that you're going to tolerate it really, really well. Because some people have very finicky stomachs, and so it's really good to practice and know what's going to sit in your stomach, and you'll handle it just fine. And then also an aspect, especially for newer age groupers that might be listening, is make sure that you are comfortable on the bike. Become one with your bike in terms of being comfortable hydrating and taking in fuel while you're pedaling. Because I've had some newbie athletes where they're like, I'm not comfortable like unwrapping things while I'm biking. And I say, okay, well, we need to make sure you're comfortable, confident enough on the bike. Maybe have your stuff kind of pre-torn so that you can still fuel yourself. Or be prepared for really windy on the bike. Can you still take in fuel when it's like brutally windy, and still stay upright on your bike? Like, those are things that some people aren't prepared for. And like, I have a little bit of like fatalistic thinking, so like always like walking through the worst case scenarios so that you can situations.
I just building also on that, most people think about their long rides or runs as the place to practice nutrition, but you actually need to practice it at race pace as well. So even though your tempo runs or faster rides might be shorter in duration, that's when you're really challenging your GI system. So you need to practice, like Alex is saying, if it's windy out, don't stay home. Go out and practice fueling in the wind, and also practice fueling when you're going hard, because race pace training is a perfect time to be practicing your nutrition, even if it's not at a duration that you would typically think of as needing tons of nutrition.
Yeah, I've had that situation with an athlete who during his 70.3s, he'd get really sick in his runs, and it was because he wasn't practicing race pace in his training, and he was going at a much higher pace on day, and so his heart rate was higher, and he would just get sick because he couldn't, like, his body wasn't prepared to handle that fluid and those fuels. So that was kind of an interesting situation of like, hey, if you're going to go out at this pace on race day, you need to train that way, or vice versa. And so that was kind of a big learning for him, in that just resolving those GI issues.
You mentioned formats. There's a while everybody should trial and see what's the right format for them. I think in general, it's obviously easier to take in more solid foods on the bike than on the run. Yeah. So, especially for the longer stuff, you might find that you actually want to chew something, because you're out there for such a long time. So, bars and chews might be the right thing for a bike ride. I find that I can't chew when I'm running. So that's when you might go for gels and drinks. So, but you have the option of trying these things. And that's another thing besides figuring out how many grams of carbs you can tolerate per hour and practicing that and trying to push it up. You can also figure out what are the right formats for the discipline. So those are all good things while you're progressing through your months of training. You know, it's great. We're mid-March now. You got time before probably your A-level events to be practicing formats and amounts.
Yeah, the pick is the buffet. That's what I always say is I can handle just about anything. I'm personally a huge fan of a peanut butter and jelly at the halfway point of an Ironman bike. Like there's just nothing better than like just a little bit of solid food like halfway through the day. Like it's just a little booster.
I'm definitely taking that point because I have done my fair share of all liquid, and it takes its toll for sure.
Yeah.
So we've kind of covered the leading up, pre, during. So we know that we're supposed to be, getting proper nutrients in our daily diet, making sure we're fueling pre-workout or pre-race, making sure that we're fueling the right amount, the right type, the right format during our race or during our training. It makes sense to wrap up chronologically, and then we get into recovery. So, and Alex, you actually we just published an incredible article on one of the key ingredients of recovery, which is protein. So if you haven't checked it out, shameless plug, AgeGrouper.us. You can check it out on the homepage.
2-part series too, so you got to stay tuned for the next part of that series.
Definitely. We give you the what, and then we go to the why.
In your day, yeah.
But when we start thinking about recovery, the concept of training, many people don't realize that when you're working out, when you're running, riding, when you're swimming, that is not building fitness. That is providing the stress. Fitness is built after, when your body is recuperating, recovering, and it comes back stronger. So recovery is actually an entire discipline in itself. So when we start thinking about fueling for recovery, immediately after the workout, what are some of the guidelines that we should be all thinking about and keeping in mind?
Yeah. So, I mean, you hear a lot about like that critical like window for a workout, that 45-minute to an hour mark. And that's like really when your body is primed to like take in fuel and initiate that recovery process really efficiently. And one of the big issues I find with athletes is that they just don't have an appetite when they finish their workout, which is pretty common actually, I think. And we're not really quite sure. I think it has to do with just like body is stressed out, it's overheated, and the last thing you want to think about is eating. With the exception of swimming, I always find like everyone is hungry after you get done to swim. So making sure that even if you're not hungry, make sure to take in something. So you're looking at ideally like a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. So if you're taking 20 grams of protein, then you want 60 to 80 grams of carbohydrate post-workout. If you're due to already have a meal, let's say you have a workout before lunch, just have your lunch afterwards and have that be your there. You don't have to have like a special post-recovery like protein smoothie and then have lunch. You can just go and have lunch if you want. Or if you're not going to have a meal for a couple hours, then definitely make sure you have that post-workout recovery snack to initiate that process, and then having that a couple hours later to continue that recovery, supplying that energy and that nutrition.
Definitely. And then Eric, I know that with the Powerbar recovery product, that one's pretty specially formulated. As people are thinking about the supplement route and going for the recovery shake, are there certain things people should think about as they're deciding between one product and another?
Yeah, well, just yes, building on what Alex said, 20 grams of protein has been shown to be the right level of protein for most people. Post-exercise, as Alex was saying, is not typically a time you're feeling like eating. And so, grabbing something liquid and easy to take down and maybe even taste good is a great way to go. But, some of the research we've also been involved in is, what is the best way to consume protein throughout the day for recovery? And we actually helped sponsor a study that was published in a great journal. And it suggested that 20 grams of protein about every 3 hours is the best way for your muscles to remodel, rebuild, and for your muscles to adapt. It's not really just about recovery. Recovery is just bringing you back to where you were. Adaptation is like over months. You get little by little bit better. And like you're saying, exercise is a stress, and what happens in between is that your body, it's amazing. Unlike a car, at 100,000 miles, your car's breaking down. What humans throw at our bodies, we get better at. So if you lift heavy weights, your body says, I need big muscles to lift heavy weights. If you do endurance exercise, your body says, I need more mitochondria, I need more capillaries. All of these things are still made of protein. So protein is not going to give you big biceps if you're going out and cycling 4 hours. It's going to give you more mitochondria and capillaries, and your VO2 is going to improve, and all that. And so this throughout the day protein is the best way to offer your body the fuel or the building blocks to build your endurance proteins in your muscles. Throughout the day, you're constantly either building, and it's anabolic in protein, or catabolic. When you're exercising, you're catabolic. And throughout the day, you eat, and right after eat, you're anabolic. And then after a few hours later, you're catabolic. And what you want to do is kind of keep your body in that building phase constantly throughout the day. Most American diets have plenty of protein at dinner, are kind of light the rest of the day. And so the concept is really kind of spacing that out throughout the day for optimal athletic recovery and adaptation. So the way I like to think of it is, if you can get 20 grams of protein at your 3 meals, and we could talk about, Alex could probably tell you all kinds of ways you get that 20 grams of protein: a can of tuna, a Greek yogurt, 3 ounces of chicken. And instead of so if you get those 3 20-gram protein meals, getting a couple more in between meals is a great way to go. So instead of reaching for the carby snack, make sure your snacks have protein in them. Could be a bar, could be a drink, it could be a Greek yogurt or something like that.
Yeah, and I think including some carb in there too will be helpful, because that little bit of that insulin response really helps, like that amino acid uptake with the muscle as well. I'm actually a really big fan for some athletes that really had like a hard workout that day, is even doing like an evening protein bedtime snack to help with recovery overnight. That can be a really nice tool to do. So don't listen to Oprah that you can't eat after 7 p.m. Like definitely like feel open to having some protein in the evening.
What's an example of a snack? Because I'm immediately going to do that tonight.
Yeah, so like you could do like a yogurt parfait with some berries and granola, or you could do, I've had some athletes just do a simple protein shake. I've had, what else? Like even some like cereal and milk. And I like to do some of the higher protein milks, like Fairlife or Chobani has a new product out too. Like it's just a really easy swap to get some extra quality protein in. So yeah, like be open to a bedtime snack.
Yeah, I am definitely doing that. So, well, those were the main topics we meant to cover. We do have a few minutes, and I know we had a couple questions come in from the crowd here. One of them was, would you take the same amount of carbs in the first and last hour in effort? I guess if you're doing a longer bike ride, is it actually makes sense to alter or stagger your carb intake throughout a ride or throughout a training?
I could take that. So there is a lag between the time you put the carbs in your mouth and the time and how long it takes to get your muscles. So at a certain point, let's say 30 minutes before the end, you're not getting those carbs to your muscles. What's really important is to start early, because if you, like I was saying before, the absorption is the limiting factor. If you wait 2 hours or 2.5 hours until you feel hungry or your energy is starting to flag a little bit, you can't catch up. You still have the same amount of carbs that can be absorbed per hour. So you're really doing your homework early to help yourself later. So I think the most important thing is to get early and regular. And then towards the end, especially if you're racing and especially if you're doing full Ironman, it's going to get harder to take in your nutrition after 7, 8, 9 hours. It's harder. And at that point, and I'm just going to give you a little advanced topic, and that's that there are carbohydrate receptors in your mouth. Matt, I've told you about this. Just getting the carbs in your mouth and not even swallowing them has been shown to improve performance. So if you get to the end of a long thing and you're like, I cannot get another gel down, sports drink, anything, if you can get it in your mouth and swish it around, you might actually get an advantage. So
You're right.
The short story is start early, go often, and toward the end, do what you can. And even if you have to just get it in your mouth and swish it around.
Yeah, I always, my saying is like, eat before you're hungry, drink before you're thirsty. Because once you start to feel those, you're behind, and it takes time to catch back up. And especially, with like longer races like that, and in like a 70.3 or Iron, we can keep you really well for the bike. That just sets you up for success in the run. So
Definitely.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question. I saw this one come up a couple times, so I think it's worth, and I also think it's a good one. So under fueling and its increased risk of injury. So specifically, can under fueling contribute to stress fractures? Most importantly on the run. Is that something that people should be thinking about?
Yes, I would say for sure. It's just part of that stress response of like you're underfueled, your body's gonna have to prioritize where that nutrition goes to, and so other things are going to be at risk for injury, and fractures is definitely one of them.
Yeah, and I'll just say under fueling in general, there's a whole field of research about people who are trying to lose too much weight, and they're just not taking in the amount of energy that they need in a day. And over time, there's a whole, it used to be called female athlete triad. Under fueling can lead to injuries and other issues. So that's what I was saying. If you fuel for your exercise, don't be afraid to fuel up your exercise, and don't be afraid to back off a little bit when you have your easy days. And that's the best way to give yourself the fuel for your workouts and for your races, and then also to balance it out when you're going easier.
Definitely. Well, we're coming up on our time, so I want to just take a minute and say thank you to both of you, both for the time here, and we also spent some time preparing to make sure we had the right and appropriate content. And thank you to everyone who joined. We're going to be saving and publishing this on all of our Instagram. You have access, and you can go back and re-listen or share with others. We do have one special surprise for everyone. So hot off the presses, officially this week, the infamous yellow bottle, Powerbar yellow water bottle, is now live and available. And as Eric and many have said, yellow looks great on all bikes. So we have, through our partnership with Powerbar, we can actually provide a code, which is just code AgeGrouper. And in your next purchase, you can get a free Powerbar water bottle and make all your friends jealous on your next run or ride. So go check it out, powerbarsport.com.
It's sport.powerbar.com. And try out some products. There's good information on, and some of the stuff that we talked about is actually on the website as well. We'd be happy to have you guys showing the Powerbar bottle out there. So go grab this nice gift with a purchase.
Definitely. Sport.powerbar.com, promo code AgeGrouper. And then you can find Alex at alexlarsonnutrition.com or Alex Larson Nutrition on Instagram. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks.
Enjoy the warm weather.
Yeah, definitely.
You're on the East Coast anyway. Ciao.